Today on the show, we'll be talking to Frederic Berger, social worker here in the Valley. Welcome to the show, Frederic.
Thank you very much, Andy.
So, Frederic, what brought you to the Valley?
Well, what brought me to the Valley was what I found here. I was searching for a place that had community that would be welcoming and that would be nurturing what I wanted to be involved with. I kind of stumbled across the Valley here from New York City, where I hail from. I was looking for less crowding. I was looking for less of an urban environment, which this certainly is. And I was looking for an environment that would support efforts to increase diversity, which this did not have the diversity that New York City does, but I wanted a place where I could help that to grow. And I also was coming from a place where I was raised. Both my parents were veterans, and so I come with a built-in admiration, respect, and kind of a call to duty to serve veterans. So initially, I got into doing social work, and not with veterans, but with the general population. And then I found that in the area here, there's a overrepresentation of veterans, if you will, compared to the standard sample of the population. But I went to work for the Department of Veterans Affairs here in White City at the Southern Oregon Rehabilitation Center and Clinics, and got into recovery, got into the notion of helping vets to welcome them back to civilian life. So I've been doing that for many years since and intend to continue.
Okay, I know you know a lot about the social services here in the community. Can you tell us some of the things that are available?
Sure, yeah, I can. And there are social services available here in the Valley. They are not intuitively available. You don't find out about these social services just because you feel a need for them. In fact, they can be kind of hard to access and identify for people that do need to access the services. So the services in particular that I have been involved with help people both in all psychosocial aspects of their life. Sorry about the social worky phrase, but I find that veterans and other people too have a need for community just like I do and just like we all do. And I would like to create as welcoming an environment for people as possible that includes those social services, but social services such as that can help to provide affordable and preferable housing. Without that, without a safe place to live, there's no amount of money or psychiatry or medication or any other clinical supports that will help to allow a person to feel at home.
Okay, you've been in the Valley for how long now?
40 years. It's
40
been
years
a long
here.
time. I'm an old man.
And what would you consider to be the greatest need here in the Valley?
Well, it depends who you are and what your needs are. And so I would kind of like to look at that part of our population, those people that are among us that are most vulnerable. And by vulnerable, I mean vulnerable in terms of needs for food, shelter, clothing, safety, and to me, providing for the most vulnerable parts of our population is really the call. It's really what all of us here in the Valley should have at the front of our minds when we're using or providing resources for people in the Valley. So that is so people that are homeless, people that are impoverished, poor, people that are sick, and people who are emotionally troubled. So all of that, and to me, that's the part of the population that calls out most loudly to me. So that's the part of the population that I want to continue serving.
Okay, and there are some networks in this valley that people can access when they have these needs. Can you explain about how to go about doing that, or who some of those are?
Sure. And networks is a word that kind of, it's maybe a little too, it sounds a little too well developed. Our networks are like a safety net that has holes in it, and people can fall through those holes. So if a person, for instance, has some need that is keeping them up at night or in some way troubling them to the point where it's disturbing relationships and disturbing their ability to function in their daily life, and that person can access networks. There's the 211 telephone number. That is just what it sounds like, 211. And that number on the telephone will result in a contact with a human being eventually that will provide services of all different sorts in terms of food, shelter, clothing, medication, all sorts of different assistance. And so that's one. And that's available to the civilian population as well as veterans, and it's a wonderful resource. It's not well known in the general population. So there are also other resources so that a person can call Helpline, and I think that number is something like 776 or 779 HELP, and a person will answer. And the person that's calling can request whatever assistance they would like, and the person on the other end of the line is trained and has a resource list in front of them to offer to the callers. So that's kind of a simplistic notion. And you know, folks may have need for, should I call it spiritual or cultural affiliation that they're familiar with or comfortable with, so that churches and temples and religious affiliations are sought, and those are available. So we've got temples here, the Havara and Emek Shalom here in Ashland, and we've got St. Vincent de Paul here in Ashland and Talent and Medford and Central Point, that are available and provide social services and provide consultation for people who have a need for some solace, some counseling. And so those organizations are well connected, and they have parts of those spiritual affiliations that are dedicated to helping people with that background and who want to be affiliated that way.
Okay, you personally are very active in the community and providing services and helping people. What kind of things do you do?
Good question. Well, I'm volunteering with the local conference of St. Vincent de Paul. I'm with the Havara. There's a caring group of people at the Havara that help folks who make contact with them. I'm with Stand Down, which is kind of a service to homeless and at-risk veterans. And I have worked in the field as a social worker and an outreach worker for the Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program that's operated by Easter Seals, and for the Department of Veterans Affairs. I retired from that organization some decades back. And I love continuing my affiliations with those organizations and using those organizations as references for people who have needs that could be met there. So veterans in particular, but poor people and people that have mental illness are my community. They're my calling, my muse, if you will. And so I have been vice president of the local chapter of the National Alliance for Mental Illness, and so I love that organization. That provides support for family members, for people with mental illness, for people, friends and families of folks that have those problems. And there are a lot more corridors for gaining assistance that people with mental illness can access. So those organizations are really key to me.
Okay, I find that there a stigma sometimes in communities where people hesitate to go out and ask for the help that they need at times. Is there a way for somebody to do that privately? Are there like numbers or organizations or people that can help people through that stigma?
That's a great question, and you are exactly right. I mean, the stigma associated with asking for help can really prevent somebody from asking for help until their situation is so dire and has so many complex needs that it's a mountain of problems that have developed. And so I would say sooner is better than later asking for help, and any of the organizations that I mentioned are excellent organizations to contact to ask for that help. There are human beings that are working in those agencies who are working there because they got into the field because they want to help. I understand that asking for help in this culture, and for many of us, is very difficult. We are a rugged individualist culture. We value those values, and so asking for help can be humbling, humiliating, depending on the person. And so that calling St. Vincent de Paul, or calling the Havre, or calling the Department of Veterans Affairs, is a humbling experience for the people that serve as well. And I hope that folks in this community can recognize that the stigma associated with asking for help, the stigma associated with identifying mental illness, even depression, anxiety, situational disorder of some sort, those are conditions that can be life-threatening. Certainly they threaten the quality of life. And so, to me, it's best to get help sooner rather than later, but at whatever point in the process. Any person that recognizes that they have a need that goes beyond what they can do alone, which I will say we are social creatures. We're not going to go through any of this by ourselves, and we're not going to accomplish much by going it alone. Ask for help, and hopefully the people that you ask for help will be responsive in a way that's appropriate to you. I won't guarantee that that will happen, but keep trying, keep asking for help with whatever part of Maslow's hierarchy of need you find yourself lacking. That is to say, self-actualization and safety and physiological needs that you may have. Food, shelter, clothing are the very basics of health. But there's morbidity, that is, there is life and death issues. Those are critical. But there are also issues of morbidity that have to do with well-being, taking care of yourself. And I think asking for help is taking care of yourself in spades. So the belief that when you ask for help, it's because you're flawed or weak or there's something deeply wrong with you that can never be fixed, that's not true. Asking for help is essential to a healthy lifestyle. So I would say to anybody that's listening that has thought about asking for help, go ahead, ask for it. No harm will befall you, and it could be a wonderful discovery.
Right. People tend to be very stoic, especially veterans, which I deal with a lot. And friends see things that people need sometimes. If you're seeing that in a person, is there a suggested way for you to solicit that help for them or guide them to that help?
Yes, I mean, first of all, it's only human, maybe all too human, to identify with somebody who's experiencing depression or anxiety or having some problems, behavioral problems. And if you do see a friend or an affiliate, a neighbor, who's showing signs of difficulty, it's best to name it. That is to go to the person and say, hey, I see that you're having some difficulties. I see that you're experiencing some struggles. And if there's anything I can do to help, I'll do it. Please don't hesitate to contact me. And what's it about? Just ask to talk about it. And if it goes above and beyond your ability to do anything that you feel would be really helpful, have a list of resources at hand that you can hand out to the person.
Okay. How would someone go about finding where that list of resources, like a printed list that you can have at your access? How would you go about finding something?
Well, there's a couple of places that are have really good resource lists. St. Vincent de Paul, in any part of the community, has an excellent resource list. It's field tested, if you will. That is, the people at St. Vincent have referred people, and when they have success at accessing those resources, that's noted, and they put that on their resource list. So it's not just a list of bureaucratic organizations. These are agencies that really help people and that have been very functional in that respect. So that's one outlet where you can seek a resource list that's really good. There's also the Rogue Valley Council of Governments, RVCOG. You can look them up online, and they have an excellent resource list as well. It can be a trifold that goes in your pocket. And it's pretty basic, goes to food, clothing, shelter, that sort of thing, but also employment, financial difficulties, legal difficulties. So they're all kind of teased out there in a way that's very accessible. So these organizations are very helpful in providing those resource lists.
Okay, we've got a couple of minutes left, and if people are watching the show and would like to talk to you, would that be something that you'd be willing to do?
I am open to that, yes. And a couple of ways to contact me. One, I have a website online, Frederic Berger, LCSW, and that's Licensed Clinical Social Worker. If you Googled that, you'd come up with my website. I think I need to update it, but it's there online. And as well, I live in Talent, and I have my business cards at the Downtown Coffee Shop, which is a nice coffee shop too. I'm not paid to say that. But anybody that wants to contact me can get my information from that business card at that address. And so I look forward to, if anybody does contact me, I will provide what resources I know about. And I will do that gratis. There's no charge for that. That's just what I do and who I am.
Okay, Frederic, well, thank you for being here with us today. We really appreciate you showing up and talking with us.
Well, thank you for asking the questions. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right.